she is. Hi, Joanna. So, welcome, Joanna. I'm really excited to have you join us because you are a very standout coach, particularly in the UK. And I've been watching your show, The Fast and the Curious. Very jealous of the name. Very jealous. And I think you've got an incredible kind of view on how to evolve teams and stuff like that. So I'm really pleased to have you join us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Very nice.
Brilliant. Well, look, before we get stuck in, tell us about yourself. How did you get here? What do you do? And how do you know so many people?
The power of LinkedIn.
Yeah, there you go.
It became my platform. So 7 years ago, I started the Change Creators. Previous to that, I did 20 years in advertising agencies. So my last role was on the exec team. It was a very challenging role. Found myself no confidence, rock bottom in a country that I didn't live in, which was the other side of the world. And it was just like, well, what do I do now? I turned 40 and it was one of those points of going, there's a real problem in leadership. I've just been on the other hand of it and I want to do something to change it. So that's where the Change Creators came about. I just immersed myself in coaching, human behavior, mindset, and also just to help human beings just be the person they want to be. And the podcast is the Courageous Leaders because I went to an event and it was just called The Courage to Be You. And I went, need a bit of that. There we go. And that's where the passion came from.
How did you get into that mindset yourself?
It was tough. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't easy. But I think it's a bit like, I was talking to someone about this the other day, is when you cut the plan B, it was like, turned 40, live in a different country, and I really didn't want to go back into an agency. So it was that crossroad path where you just either go all in or you be unhappy. And I was like, I never thought I'd set up a business. I'm not a natural entrepreneur. So you can run a business even if, you're not this entrepreneurial type. It is totally possible. I think it's a bit harder work, but it's possible. And I just decided to back myself. And I remember going down to my husband because my background was shy, people pleaser, accommodator, wanted to prove myself, didn't believe, like all of that. That was me for many, many years. Didn't stop me being successful, but it came at a cost to me and my health because no one knew on the outside that was going on, but on the inside it was tough. And I remember going down to my husband and I had some money in savings and I was like, oh, should put it in an ISA? And I was like, no, I'm going to put it in me and I'm going to retrain and I'm going to make sure I can control the return of investment and I'm going to make this work. So it was that moment of, I'm going to back me.
Oh my God, you just literally made the hairs stand on end because this is why I love your content so much and why I loved it when we got chatting. Now we started down that, let's talk about kind of leadership identity and what that actually means to you. And what do you think is missing there? Why do you think these, like you said, it's like you're not a natural entrepreneur, but you clearly are. But like people then go, I'm a natural leader, but they're clearly not.
And it is like how we label stuff we're meaning making machines. It's like what I think an entrepreneur means will be something to what it means to somebody else. But I think identity is very, very personal. And the thing I see people do the most, and I've done it myself, is we overcomplicate it. We try and make it like this big, who am I question? And we try and seek all this stuff. And it's like, if you bring it back down to the simplest, and I'm a big fan of Adam Grant's work. So if this is resonating with you, his Think Again book, I would recommend to people. At the core of it, your identity is your values. Just what's most important to you. So I've got my core values and I've got my aspiration ones that are helping me become the person I want to be. But I've got my real core values of really is my makeup. Everything else, like my purpose, my mindset, my beliefs, all of those things can change. So they're not my identity, but they're things I maybe believe at the moment. But if I make them my identity, I can become very, very rigid in my thinking and what I'm doing. But just knowing what is most important to you. So what my number one value is care. So if I care for myself, I can care for others. So that's then put really good boundaries in place so I can show up. Like one of my standards is to show up 100%. So if I can care for myself, that then fuels all my decisions on how I do it. because I value being able to show up for other people. So, my second value is then curiosity. I'm a naturally curious person, which is why coaching came in. So then that's formed my rituals with learning and where I spend my money and who I want to hang out with and be in a room with. So I don't ever want to be the smartest in the room because I stopped learning. So just taking that time to know your values, and it'd be amazing. I go into rooms with leaders, and I do one-to-one, but I predominantly work with leadership teams. And I ask, please put your hand up if you know your values. 1 out of 9 might know them. And I go, well, that's maybe why you're a bit confused in terms of who you are.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I've been through that process. Mark Rickson talks a lot about the 4 P's and the structure of doing a brand strategy, but it doesn't mean that you can't adapt, to current trends and things like that. And the same thing applies to us, doesn't it? It's like, as long as you understand what your values are, and again, that's kind of what led me. I love the frame pivoting. Where was that moment then when you did that to your own identity and changed the game?
It was a bit of both, because when I started, I was not in a good place. I was pretty low. Like, my husband had to even come to my first coaching training with me. I turned up like full of beans and confidence, and with the 8 months was pretty much rock bottom. So it took a bit of me building my confidence back up to even be able to do it. And I remember someone, the amazing mentor I had, turned around to me and said, you don't know what your internal world is. And I was like, what do you mean I don't know what my internal? He said, you've spent your whole life choosing who you are based on what you can see outside of you and what other people think. You don't know your own. You don't. And I was like, what do you mean this internal world? I didn't even know there was one. So no wonder there isn't one. And then that light bulb moment of, there's this whole world going on inside me that I have responsibility over, a choice over, to manage. And if I can look after that, actually what goes on outside of me, I have choice. But if this isn't strong inside me, I've taken away that choice, because I'm then just reliant on other people determining who I was. So that was the first thing that clicked. And the second thing is when someone said to me, your mind is not who you are, it's a tool you use. I was like, ah? So the minute I started to see my mind as a sat nav, I was like, oh, okay, I've just got to plug in where I want to go. And if I give it really poor instructions, I am going to end up in a dead end somewhere. But if I actually program my mind for good stuff, it will take me where I want to go. So that's where I started. And then the values then really kind of like, right, I could go into values. I hadn't even heard the word boundaries 7 years ago. I was like, what the hell is that? All right. And now I can do my boundaries. Now I can raise my standards. And I say over 18 months, I really built my internal world up, and my life completely changed.
Wow. So I got a question. I think I do know the answer to it because I've done it. But what's the difference between a business coach and a therapist then?
Well, so business coach, leadership coaching on traditionally is all about moving you forward. We will go to the past, and I will do some NLP, some timeline, and I will understand, and I do systemic coaching to understand patterns. But this is all very much about, I'm looking for the pattern. I don't need the whole story. I'm looking for the pattern to help you go to where you want to be. Where therapy is more about, let's talk through the past. Let's get it out your system. Let's just do a lot of talking therapy. And then you've got CBT and tools on top that can help. But the therapy is really talking it through, where coaching is very much about how do we move you forward.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Good to know. So how do you go about it? What's your, what is your process to build this confident leadership?
So how do I do it? So I stick a leader in a room for 4 hours with me, and they can't escape.
Wow.
Because I just you're not going to make a big breakthrough in a 1 hour Zoom. Okay. And, I don't know you. We don't know each other. You can do your prep calls and stuff. I use DISC tool as well. So I think DISC for me, when I did that, it helped me know how to run a business. Because so DISC is understanding the behaviors you do and why you do what you do. So it helped me understand how preferred decision making, connection and things. So it helped me then, who did I need to build around me? What were my gaps? Where could I lean into my strengths? So I always do that, because it's one tool for self-awareness, which is a brilliant launch pad. And for a leader, it also helps you think about how to connect with your peers, managing up, and connect with your team so well. But then I focus 4 hours, and we have in depth. I call it building out your environment of who you are. We go through values, we clear the beliefs. I just do a lot of listening. I see all the patterns. We connect all the dots. I have people laughing. I have people dancing. I have people crying. We go wherever we need to go. But it's that intense. And actually, the coach who I have my own coach. I said to them, I need to come to your house and do a 4-hour session. This is where the magic is. And she's like, I've never done that before. I'm like, trust me. And that's why it's like, I'm coming. I need it as well. You go home, you are exhausted afterwards, but the clarity you get, because I think you've got to have that foundation of self-awareness first to then, otherwise it's like trying to build a house of leadership strategies without the ground. Yeah.
Go on, carry on.
No, I was going to say, because like when I go into training, when I do it in my group trainings, I'm like, look, I can teach them the radical candor framework. I can teach them DISC. I can do all of that. But if we don't do the foundation of self-awareness and trust and personal responsibility and self-leadership first, that model is going to be in the bin in 2 weeks because people haven't understood themselves and how they can use it and their fears and their mindset. So this is my huge thing is I just say to companies, don't waste money on all these tools and stuff if the team have got low awareness.
Wow.
It's a bit of a rant.
No, this is perfect. This is exactly the right thing. And actually, ironically, like really ties into what we just talked about, which is the art of slowdown. Because in theory, that's kind of what you're trying to do is you're trying to get these people to slow down, sit in a room and think for a change, not just keep running. Because that's half of the stress, isn't it? Is we just keep running and because of digital, because of economics, because of job pressures.
So a few things you can do. If you think about it, every single human being walks around with a big billboard on their head saying, please make me feel like I matter. That's what we're seeking as human beings. Just make me feel seen, make me feel heard. We want people to know who we are. So, any people listening now is ask yourself, do you actually know your team's values? Because if you don't, what a wonderful question to go, do you know what? I'd really love to know what's important to you because that will tell you how they make their decisions, how they need to look after their energy, what's their, especially if someone is valuing family first and another one's got financial security, they're going to work very, very differently and they're going to make very different choices. You'll also be able to identify why there might be tension in the team because of the different values within the team. So that's one. The other one you can really do is I absolutely love the 6 core needs by Tony Robbins. So if we think about it, the really core ones, you've got uncertainty and certainty. So as human beings, we need, imagine a seesaw, we need a nice level of certainty and a nice level of uncertainty. So this could be also variety and adventure. This could be security. So we want a nice balance. The minute there's too much uncertainty, that's where a lot of overwhelm, anxiety, and that gets caused, which is what we're seeing in a lot of companies at the moment. So as a leader, to understand from your team's point of view, what gives them certainty? Because it'll be different for everyone. So for me, routine's very important. Structure's very important. Having instructions, having things in writing is really important to me. Like I read all the document you sent me. I like to make notes. That's important. So then my leader would then know, if that gives me certainty, what can I then make sure I do to bring Joe back up? Okay. Or give me a project I can do with my eyes shut. So while I'm running a pitch and it's chaos, I've got something I can do to balance it that I can do really easily and feel good and feel in control. So as leaders, you're always with your team trying to navigate that fine line of that balance and uncertainty, the certainty and uncertainty, and where is your team in that? So there's a lot you can cover in this. And then the other ones are people need connection. They need contribution. They need significance. That make me feel like I'm important, and they need growth. So something you can do with your teams is just get them to score 1 to 5 on how are their needs being met on these things. And if they're scoring under the 3, you then say, well, what would you need to get that to a 3.5 or a 4? So you start to find out what your teams need versus assuming you think you know, or treating them all the same, that they're all just going to want a team night out. That will lift spirits. No, it's this individual approach to help them manage their energy, manage their core needs so they can show up and know how they make their decisions through their values. you just having those conversations and getting curious with them, immediately they're just going to sit up more and go, my leader cares about me. And then when you feel cared about, you naturally then care about your work more, the company more, and that bond is a lot stronger.
How do you approach them, and what's the outcome? I know you say you've got this superpower, but there must have been a couple of barriers.
And you got the cynics. I've had the cynics with disc. You're like, don't you put me in a box? Don't you do this? And what happens is when someone's very disruptive like that and they come into the team session, I treat them exactly the same kind, because I always have a one-to-one each team leader as well. So I get a sense if there's going to be an issue. And I ask all of them, to say, all I ask you to do is to show up for your team members and respect everybody there. When that doesn't happen in the room, I bring what we call is the red energy, that more direct energy, but again with compassion. And what you actually notice, and it's incredibly sad to watch sometimes, is they dig their own grave, because you can see everybody in the team just looking at them going, really? Come on, what's this? And then a lot of the time I'll do some one-to-one to see if we can actually move it forward. Or then it does come down to the decision of, is this one person, is the talent or whatever of this one person worth keeping at the cost of the team? And some serious conversations can happen, because because there's more negative emotions and stuff. I call it one bad egg who's not willing to change or adapt or evolve or have emotional intelligence or empathy can bring a whole team down more than 6 others can bring up. That one person will lower the standards immediately.
100%. So, go on. Sorry.
The risk you've got, if that person's in a leadership position, you are saying to the rest of the company, we believe this is what good leadership is. You're saying this is okay. So other people, the standards across everything will go, and just the whole respect, everything. And then it becomes very, very difficult to manage any poor behavior, because you're like, well, the leaders are doing it. Why can't we do it?
Oh my God, Joanna, you're the guilt I'm feeling now over the last 30 years of leadership. I was like, oh, that's why that didn't work.
I say, and the biggest, most confronting thing I say, and I've had to do it to myself, like I've been on a journey of leadership, is if you look at your team is a mirror, most of the time, a mirror reflection of your leadership. So if they're overwhelmed and stressed or not delivering or missing details or in back-to-back meetings, just look at yourself, because it's probably a reflection of your leadership. It's quite confronting, but yeah.
This segues quite nicely into this question, because we're chasing productivity, and but it's the challenge, because and that's why just this conversation is kind of, it's making me excited, but also regret some of my decisions from previous years, because that's the trouble when you're an entrepreneur and you're on a mission and you do have to make a bottom line profit and things like that. And so I think that's, and I'm talking from personal experience here, that's the challenge. It's very difficult. I'm a very open person and wear my heart on my sleeve, because I want to be honest and but then is there a challenge that you can do much?
Well, and this is the hard thing. This is why I talk to a lot of leaders about short-term results versus long-term. And unfortunately, too many leaders are so focused on that short-term bottom line versus, if I just spend a little bit more time in my team, if I spend a little bit more time coming off autopilot thinking and consciously thinking more, actually, like I'm actually next week doing training on critical thinking. Actually stop for a moment and think about what the thinking I'm doing here, and have I consulted the right people? Am I really thinking this through, or am I just being reactive? Because this reactive leadership, what it's doing, it's creating stress, overwhelmed, poor decisions. It's now creating an over-reliance on AI, because people are time poor. They're just getting AI to do stuff. And we're going to lose the art of what we are capable of doing as humans. So it's very, very easy. I don't know if you know Dr. Stephen Peters' work, the chimp management stuff. It's very, very easy to let your chimp take over, because your chimp wants to win, to go, no, just go for the A. Yes, say yes to that pitch. Yes, it doesn't matter. The team will figure it out. We'll give them a holiday afterwards. Oh no, there's going to be another pitch coming to that. Oh shit, everyone's betting out. It's so easy to get caught in that trap, which is all driven by fear.
want to do the quick fire, and then I've got a final question at the end. So, culture. What cultural reference? A book, artist, or movie? What would you talk about?
There's one that's very relevant for me at the moment is unreasonable hospitality. You can see all my stickers. Look at all of that. I mean, notes. And the reason this means a lot to me is my dad was a chef. So my first job at 12 was a waitress. So I was running a restaurant at the age of 15. So that experience of hospitality and what it took and the effort for service. And then reading, and like I recently went to Core, the restaurant. It was a real treat. And just seeing how this team worked in this restaurant, it blew my mind. And I interviewed them all about how they did it. It was incredible. And and this book, if you know the Bear series,
Yeah.
the Bear came off this book. And if you're going to watch one episode, just watch the Forks episode. This is inspirational of how you lead, cultural, and brilliant.
I love it. Have you have you turned that? Did you just talk to all the, or have you made that an episode where you talk to the
I've been here at the restaurant for quite a long time. So every waitress and waiter, because you get, I just get, so how do you do this? What do you do this? What are your standards? And I was just asking. They'd be so happy to share what they did and the way they think. And I just watched and observed about how, like, and you never ever felt that they needed to be somewhere else. Ever.
Wow.
There's some the team could see I was talking to them. They picked up what they needed to do. It was like an orchestra of just harmony. It's exceptional, absolutely exceptional.
Amazing. Brand. What's the brand you most admire? Do not say Patagonia.
Well, actually, think about this, because I wouldn't say I don't really have brands in my face really, but I'd go, always been impressed by Virgin. I think the courage to do, the risks that have been taken, they celebrate difference. The boldness. I really like Richard Branson. I think it's just like, okay, we'll be adaptable, we're flexible, we're doing airline, we'll do hot air balloon, why not? And I just think, let's do music. I just think that courage and openness and willing to try is something to be admired.
Virgin set me up in business. They enabled my first agency. So I'm a big fan. Health. How do you balance all this? Like, you obviously been unhealthy and then now you're healthy. What do you do?
And I'm not going to put anything that I'm perfect. I will still have days where a week where I'm going, I've allowed myself to do it. I have a really strict routine now of, I'm really annoying. I am the 5 a.m.er. So I do Pilates in the morning. I go for a walk every morning. I go to the gym every morning. I read. I have a really beautiful morning ritual that if I don't do it, my day doesn't really work as well. And something that was really important, and I really want leaders to hear this that are listening, because this is what I'm finding missing in so many leaders. They don't have hobbies. So in the last 2 years, I've taken up learning golf, the Pilates, swimming, about to start paddleboarding. You need other things that not just, we call it other vehicles. Otherwise, if your identity is so wrapped up in your work and for any reason your work goes, you really won't know who you are if you don't have other vehicles in your life.
Wow, that resonates, definitely. Tech, what's one tool that's been a game changer for you?
Voice notes.
Oh, wow.
The reason is I'm such an introvert, learned extrovert, I'll say introvert. I hate picking up the phone. I'm always, I don't want to be a bother. So a voice note, just going, hi, how are you? And they can listen into it when they want. It's harder to receive them because I'm like, I've got to put my headphones in. But I love giving. So it's just wonderful.
I've got a real view on receiving voice notes, but I don't want to diss your idea.
No, while I'm doing my makeup, I'm like, oh, that's nice. And just hearing that voice and the tone, and I think it's lovely.
I'll make sure to send you a voice message next time then. And connection, what's the most meaningful collaboration you've done?
One quite recently is a lovely company, a charity called Good Nugget. I do a mentoring with them every year. They underrepresented teenagers, trying to get them into the creative industry, and I do sessions with them at how to navigate the workplace, how could you set yourself up, what are the expectations in the workplace, what it's like to have a boss. So it's really nice just giving them that foundation of, okay, when I turn up at work, I have a bit understanding of what's expected of me. So I've really enjoyed doing that.
Brilliant. I've just realised I've run over by 9 minutes. I totally with break. That's very bad for me, but it was a really good conversation. I think it was invaluable for our members, which I apologize if everybody. I've even got coffee ready to make, and I'm probably going to have to miss it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Pleasure. I loved it. Thank you. See you soon.
Brilliant.